Hello, and welcome to Starting Points, where one thing leads to another. I've got several examples for you today. The first one is from the last video. I mentioned Michael Abelman, and I said I first learned about him in his first book, and I didn't have a copy to show you, but I knew where I could get a copy. I could get one from University of Victoria. What a great policy they have to allow people who are living in the city to use their library stacks. So it was called The Good Earth, and it shows the kind of commercial setup they had, a watering system which would get the water where it needs to be and not a sprinkling system. Rows are fairly compact, and I thought it was an interesting photo, and so I'm going to share a couple of other photos with you. The title page, The Good Earth, the autobiography of an urban farm, and this amazing picture that shows the vein structure of the leaf, which looks like the branchings of a tree, one thing leading to another. The next picture I want to show you is one that he got from somebody else. It's unlikely that he took it. It's an aerial view of Fairview Gardens, and the landscape is pretty much completely food producing with farms. Here's, in this red rectangle, is their farm in the year 1954. Some highway, some living development, but basically orchards and growing. Roads are not particularly a big feature. Well, he follows that with this picture. Now, gone by is 44 years, 1998 now. Well, the farm is, the farms are almost extinct. In fact, this was the last farm, as I mentioned, that had been there. It's all been built up. And instead, what we're growing is houses. The houses are often have very little front yard, very little backyard, pretty big house in some cases, not in all cases, but green space and growing space is certainly down to this, which is no longer even a full rectangle. A little corner of it has been sold off and a big place on it with parking and taken up with parking. Fair amount of parking here as well in those big buildings. This picture says a lot to me, and Michael, as I mentioned, was able to get it designated as a historic site. And this picture is down closer. You see the properties here, again, with very little land. Someone's managed to put a pool in their backyard. That's not totally unusual. But the road up, the old farmhouse, some of the orchards, and just maximum use of the land. Here's probably a shed for repairs and tools and maybe composting here, operation there. And well, once that designation came in, Michael felt that load had been taken off of his shoulders. He could leave there. Not that he was that farming had gone out of his system, but he wanted to make some journeys. And I showed you some of the books that he subsequently wrote. Now, the video before that video, I mentioned this book by Francis Morlape, The Diet for a Small Planet. Now, this was published in 1971, and it seemingly had a market. Says with a 1 million copy bestseller. And so they reissued it. This is the reissue, 1975, where she's revised things, and it's in this, she has mainly talked in terms of facts and figures and scientifically how one could have a vegetarian diet and still get all the necessary vitamins and minerals that the human body needs. And then she has recipes in it. Well, 20 years go by, and she decides to go on a journey too. We've looked at journeys, we've looked at explorers from Columbus to Lewis and Clark to James Cook, and we've looked at explorers. But there are also these people like Michael Abelman who went out to explore on their own voyage, create the places they wanted to go. Well, that's what she did, and she wrote about it in this book with her daughter, Anna, who was 21. It's The Next Diet for a Small Planet, Hope's Edge. This is a personal, it's not filled with making the argument of facts and figures to show. This is a personal observations and encounters and personal tales of people and places that she visited. And so I won't forget those places. I've got a note here. She went to Brazil, Bangladesh, India, Kenya, Holland, Central America, and the U.S., Belgium, and France. And she ends up in Wisconsin. Quite a representative tour. She didn't get to Australia, but she's well, she and her daughter, what an experience that must be. A grown daughter and mom on a tour like this, on a fact-finding mission. And the book ends. I mean, this is real writing, conversation, a different slant on the tour than facts. What she's finding out and talking with people, and then she ends it with a section of recipes. So I am inspired by those two people. Here's a man who has inspired me. He did his traveling in a sense, all in one place. He found this, he found a house that had been built about 1556. So make that 400 plus years ago. It says 400. Well, it's more than that now, since and it had an English garden. And he was sort of like a Renaissance man to me. Well, just like both of Michael and Francis, Renaissance people. He has scientific knowledge about plants, the land, that what lives in the land, the creatures, and he has historical bent because he traces and he has all the information on this place. It's been left, who lived in there, the family trees, what life was like over that 400 years. So it's a history course in miniature. And this, I mean, it's so, I'm so absorbed by it. I just, and he's a writer, and observer, detective. So the garden. Now, this was not his first book. His first book was The Living House. Same house, same property, but the house he did first. And let's see if I've got the date for that. 1959. And The Living Garden, 1985. So recent enough to, but so inspiring to see this transition. We could see the transition here in 50 years, but here's a 400-year transition. Now, I want to look at English writers who have been moved to write about gardens, and I have some books to share with you. This is a book of women gardeners. It's edited by Deborah Kellaway. That's Kellaway. And all the writers in here are women. And it starts actually with a passage from The Secret Garden. And she's broken it up into different sort of categories, like the colorists, the people that wanted to have their gardens with create a certain color. We've talked about fragrances in gardens and things like that. And I really love this painting they found for the cover. And here she is with a straw hat, wooden handled rake, wooden fence. We can tell there's trees in the background. A broom with wooden and real use of for the bristles, and the same with this basket. So there's lots of, and I don't know if she's wearing anything cotton or wool, but it's a style of gardening with the smaller plants on the first in sort of tiers and levels up to things that will be growing even on the back. Anyway, Larry, let's get there are 5 poems in here. each of them is a beauty. But the rest are people's accounts that this woman's assembled into certain areas, but obviously spill over that. Some of them are real hoots. Now, this book by Anne Scott James is covers about the same period of time from, let's say, 1850s to 1980s. And it's a blend of male writers and women writers. This is called The Green and Pleasant Land Poetry of the English Countryside. Pictures by Gordon Benningfield. And I thought, well, now isn't that interesting? It didn't say who selected it. So inside it's Jill Hollis, Hollis, and Ian Cameron. And beautiful things that you can sort of lose yourself in the paintings, and poems that mostly men have written. There are exceptions, Emily Bronte, for example, but they're somewhat few and far between. Now, this book is called Poems on Gardens. Sweet will be the flower. And again, no credit on the cover, but selected and edited by Douglas Brooks Davies. And this one starts all the way back with a poem by Chaucer. And again, more men poets than women poets. And the same with this as well. Poets in the Garden by Dennis Wood. And so he breaks it up into things like garden, orchard, flowers. That book's got a little inscription, Merry Christmas 95 to Larry, love from Marty. And this book is by Vita Sackville West, The Land and the Garden. Now, Vita first wrote a book on the land, and that was published. And what she did in that book is she did it by seasons, looking at the English care of the land and how it was used in a wider sense than maybe just the garden, in terms of farming and growing things. So it starts with winter, spring, summer, and autumn. And 30 years go by, and then 1946, perhaps after the Second World War, her second book, the one on the garden, is published, which follows that same format of winter, spring, summer, autumn. It's a lovely, I think, complete view, the combined two versions of plants and countryside and the land. Well, thanks for joining me. Until next time, bye for now.